Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well, had a good week, and will have a good Shabbos. I will not be here this Shabbos, or actually next Shabbos as well, so I want to wish everyone a good Shabbos and Shabbat Shalom, and I look forward to seeing everyone when I'm back in Brookline. This week's video Dvar Torah is sponsored by William Sherwin in memory of his grandmother, Edith Sherwin. Ita Bat Zev Velva Aleh Shalom, whose first yahrzeit is this Shabbat, the Tet Zayin Kislev, the 16th of Kislev, and her neshama should have an aliyah, and thank you, William, for the sponsorship. We always say that the Torah is not just a history book, but is meant to teach us lessons and how to learn our lives. Chazal say, Masa Avot Similavanim, that the events in the lives of our patriarchs and matriarchs, that they are a blueprint for future Jewish history of events that will occur, and also to teach us of how to navigate those events. And is that idea I'd like to focus on, discuss a little bit briefly right now in this video, Dvar Torah. Chazal understood that Yaakov and Esav were not just two figures who lived in that time, but they were symbolic of the nations, Yaakov of the Jewish people, and Esav in particular of Rome. They saw Rome as the spiritual descendant of Esav. And they saw in Yaakov and Esav and all of the events and their meeting in the beginning of this week's Parsha as a model of, again, future Jewish history, Ma'aseh Avot Similavanim. The Medrash records that when rabbis were sent to Rome on behalf of the Jewish people to negotiate, to have discussions with the Roman authorities, they would first sit down. And of course, they would think about politically, what do they want to ask for? How are they going to ask for it? How to approach the situation. But before that, they would study in depth the beginning of this week's Parsha, Parshas VaYishlach, to gain insights and how Yaakov interacts with Esav, but to be spiritually inspired as well, because this is the source. This is where we can find the blueprint for such future events. In particular, Chazal saw Rebi Yehuda HaNasi, the leader of the Jewish people, around the year 200, who edited the Mishnah, and the Roman emperor at the time, whom the Medrash refers to as Antoninus. Maybe it's Marcus Aurelius, maybe it's a different Roman emperor at the time. They saw those two people specifically as the living embodiment at that time of Yaakov and Esav. This Antoninus was presented in the Medrash as a righteous individual, so who'd be the righteous version of Esav. But they saw these two people, again, as reliving some of the events of Yaakov and Esav. And there's a fascinating Medrash which records as follows. One time, Rebi asked his secretary to write a letter to Antoninus. And so he wrote one letter which said in it, Min Shemi V'Kasav, and he wrote in it, the secretary, Min Yehuda Nisia Limaran Malka Antoninus. A letter from Yehuda the Nasi of the Jewish people to our master, the Emperor Antoninus. Nasve V'Kare Ukrae. Yehuda Nasi took the letter that his secretary wrote. He read it and he ripped it up. Amr, and he said to him, Ksov, this is how it should be addressed. That we are writing Min Avdach Yehuda, from your servant Yehuda, not from the Nasi, the Jewish prince Yehuda, from your servant Yehuda, Limaran Malk Antoninos, to our master, the Emperor Antoninos. Amr, the secretary said to Rebi, why are you lowering yourself? Why are you taking away your rightful honor to address the emperor as your servant? Amrle, he said to him, Ma ana tav min sabi, am I greater than my grandfather Yaakov? Lo kach amar, isn't that what Yaakov said to Esav? Ko amar avdecha Yaakov. The beginning of our parsha, I, your servant Yaakov, approached you. And so Yehuda HaNasi wrote his letter to Antoninus in the same way. One time a member of the shul was discussing with me a challenging situation. They weren't going to appear before Roman authorities, but it was a situation of conflict. And the person on their own she told me, I wasn't sure what to do, so I did what Yaakov did. I sent a present to appease the person. Then I prepared for in case there would be a conflict, and I davened to Hashem. So the Medrash says the three things that Yaakov did before meeting Esav. He sent presents, he divided the camp in preparation for war, and he davened. So the person said, I did the same thing. And it struck me, it was so sincere what the person said. I wouldn't have thought how to handle the situation. Let me look in the Torah, let me look in the Chumash, let me follow what Yaakov did. And sometimes it's obviously not easy to find an exact parallel, to know exactly what we should do based on just what it says in the Torah. But the person is absolutely right. And it's amazing the person thought that, to look in the Torah, to see what to do. The Torah is not just a history book. It's not just what did happen. It's supposed to guide us in the present and the future. Rebi Yehuda HaNasi and his contemporaries looked in the beginning of this parsha to figure out how to approach the Roman contemporaries. This member of the Young Israel Brookline studied the parsha to know how to deal with the person in which they were having conflict. And whether it's this parsha or another parsha, but to always remember, we should always believe that we can find our path in life in the Torah, that we can find people and situations that we identify with in the Torah. We can find perhaps even the ways of how to handle certain situations, or if not to that degree, but to find the inspiration and the strength in the Torah of how to live our lives. The Torah is still living. It is still alive. It is not dead history. That is what I learned from the member of the Young Israel of Brookline. That is what the Medrash from HaNasi mean to teach us. Masa Avos Tim Labanim, the Torah is a blueprint for our lives. We can derive lessons and direction from the Torah even today. Good Shabbos, everyone, and Shabbat Shalom.